Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Belisarius Cawl is an ancient Archmagos dominus of the Adeptus Mechanicus and one of the ruling lords of the priesthood of Mars, the first and greatest forge world of the Imperium of Man. Cawl is responsible for the creation of the Primaris Space Marines and some of the Imperium's greatest technologies and vehicles. Now, the iconic character comes to Tacticus as its newest raid boss. In this video I'll show you the boss, breaking down his gameplay and abilities, and then show you how to craft teams and strategies to succeed. Cawl has many traits and unique abilities like all other raid bosses. We've seen all of these traits before. Cawl has the immune, big target, and mechanical traits. He has 4 active and 2 passive abilities, shown on screen, which I will explain in more depth during the gameplay section. The 2 that I want to highlight as particularly important are Arc Scourge and Pre-Calibrated Purge Solution, as those 2 abilities are the most important in terms of how the fight plays out. Cawl has a 3-hex profile and a base movement of 3. Talon, Tacticus ambassador and friend, has plotted Cawl against other bosses. We have used Legendary 5 as a baseline example. Cawl's armor at Legendary 5 is on the lower end, especially when compared to more recent bosses, sitting at 1910. The armor drops to an even more manageable 1337 after killing the side bosses. This graph shows how he compares to other bosses pre and post side boss kills. Don't let the armor lull you into a false sense of security though. I suspect it is lower because of his self-heal mechanics, but we will get into that shortly. Cawl also has 2 new AdMech NPCs fighting alongside him, the Tech Priest Engine Seer and the Electro Priest. I'm cycling through some summary slides here so you can follow along with their kit and abilities. The key things to note are that the Tech Priests can heal Cawl and also transfer stacks of Machine Vengeance to him. More on that later. The Electro Priests are annoying because of their Resilient trait and ability to suppress your units with each attack. The first active is Arc Scourge. This is probably the most important of Cawl's abilities, and he is able to use this every turn as well as take another action. Arc Scourge attacks an enemy unit within 2 hexes, and up to 3 additional units adjacent to each other are also hit, including Cawl's friendly units. Enemies hit take a small amount of damage, and if they are mechanical they are also stunned for a single round. For each mechanical unit hit, Cawl gains 1 level of Machine Vengeance. Machine Vengeance comes up in a lot of Cawl's abilities, so I'll explain what it does. For every stack that a unit has, it deals 5% bonus damage. The next active ability is Invocation of Machine Vengeance. This summons 4 Tech Priest Engine Seers at the bottom of the map and then adds 1 level of Machine Vengeance to all friendly mechanical units on the battlefield. The next active is Solar Atomizer. This transfers all levels of Machine Vengeance from other friendly mechanical units to Cawl. Cawl then faces in one of 6 directions to mark a straight line that is 2 hexes wide. At the start of Cawl's next turn, this deals melta damage to all enemies on the affected hexes. The final active ability is Shroud Psalm. This ability is a little harder to give you visuals for. It's almost an ability of exclusion. When you wonder what Cawl has done because you haven't seen any flashy animations or seen any new summons, he has probably cast this. This gives up to 2 other friendly units 2 levels of Machine Vengeance and a buff that gives them bonus armor and causes them to take reduced hits. The affected units have this icon on their profile. Cawl's first passive is a heal, self-repair mechanism. At the end of every turn, starting on turn 2, he heals himself for every level of Machine Vengeance he has. As a quick side note, if things get crazy, don't worry. The boss cannot end the fight with more health than he started with, so you won't ever make negative progress by spending a ticket. The final passive ability is Pre-Calibrated Purge Solution. As if Machine Vengeance wasn't powerful enough, giving Cawl healing and bonus damage, this passive is the icing on the cake. Once Cawl has at least 10 stacks at the start of his turn, he deals massive toxic damage to all enemies in the battlefield, almost ensuring the battle ends straight away. Something to point out is that if you've done a decent amount of damage but your team has been wiped, you can retreat from the battle at any point before Cawl starts healing himself. Once Cawl gets to 10 stacks, it's unlikely that your team is going to deal more damage than he is healing every turn. Retreating in this case still preserves the damage that you've dealt to him. There are a couple of bits of AI nuance that I have observed in testing and I wanted to share. Cawl appears to use this ability, Solar Atomizer, every time it is not on cooldown, so expect to face this several times over the course of the battle. Basically what this means is that he will be sucking up stacks of Machine Vengeance from his summons if you leave them alive. Additionally, he only uses Arc Scourge if he has less than 10 stacks of Machine Vengeance, after which the AI sort of upgrades it into a pre-calibrated purge solution. Regular channel viewers will be broadly familiar with this slide, which highlights the game's 3 core guild raid teams. We can talk about each other and analyse who might be best. The mech team is probably the easiest to discount, as it relies on the 3 core AdMech characters. Cawl is an AdMech boss, and therefore the AdMech are unusable. Even outside that, Cawl's active Arc Scourge really feeds him loads of stacks of Machine Vengeance if you are foolish enough to bring loads of mechanical units, so you should try and avoid this when possible. The Psyker Team is an interesting one to talk about. The team revolves around stacking the Neuroparasite debuff so that the Neurothrope can deal large amounts of damage. However, healing removes the Neuroparasite passive effect. Cawl has an inbuilt passive heal, as you've already denoted. This can make stacking Neuroparasite really tough. You can see here how despite us not bringing any mechanical units to the fight, his active creates lots of summons and then gives him 1 stack of Machine Vengeance, therefore our Neuroparasite buff falls off. There is a workaround in the shape of a legendary Blood Angel Psyker called Mephiston. Mephiston's passive, Fury of the Ancients, prevents a unit from healing. In action here, Cawl has both the Neuroparasite debuff as well as Mephiston's Fury of the Ancients. At the end of turn, he no longer heals, and we maintain our Neuroparasite debuff. What about Old Faithful, the multi-hit team? I think this will be a really good, consistent and accessible option for you to use against this boss. I'm showing you a full run here with both side bosses defeated. There are a couple of things to point out. I bring Gullgorch to this fight because his WAG active is a great way of buffing Ragnar, Karn and Snotflogga's damage, and his Orc Boys also let you deal with Cawl's NPCs. As you will see in this fight, Gullgorch does not get stunned once by Arc Scourge due to some careful play and positioning, so you can bring at least 1 mech if you're careful. Arc Scourge tends to be used on groups of our units, so Cawl can do the most damage. He doesn't seem to preferentially seek out mechs to add stacks of Machine Vengeance or stun them. Cawl also has relatively low armor, so you can use characters like Bellator and his summons, especially if you are a newer player. Just beware that your summons might die to Solar Atomizer or fly off to deal with the summoned tech priests at the bottom of the map. On this map there are lots of high ground hexes to take advantage of too, and you will probably be able to manipulate the boss's position by clumping your units up. I suspect Cawl will try and get as many units of yours as possible in much the same way that Mortarion and the Avatar do for their area of effect abilities. The one thing to point out, regardless of the team that you choose, is that you will need a good way of dealing with the summoned tech priests. These enter from the bottom of the map, and it can be a pain to split your forces to deal with them. The Forgefiend might help, as its active kills summons, but requires munitions and investment. I have listed on screen the health of each summon at various stages, to help you work out what level of the Forgefiend primary ability is required to one-shot them. Obviously the Forgefiend damage is a range between 2 values, so I've used the average for calculations and assumed that you have an epic Forgefiend. There are 2 side bosses to go over briefly. As has been the trend for a while, the side bosses tend to mirror the playable version of the character but have an extra ability to make them more unique. For Tangita, he has the extra ability called Rad Zone Core. At the beginning of Tangita's turn, he deals toxic damage to each enemy that has their armor reduced. At the end of his turn, he summons Skitarii Vanguards at the top of the map and contaminates 1 row of hexes on the battlefield. It's pretty straightforward to understand. Avoid the contamination hexes or you will take more damage. It's worth pointing out something here. Contaminated only affects non-mechanical and non-death guard units, so there might be a slight workaround for the side boss fight. Galgorts, for example, could deal reliable damage to Tangira, and his summoned orc boys could deal with the summoned Skitarii in the north. The Forgefiend is pretty key for this fight too, for two reasons. You can either use it to kill the Skitarii summons at the top of the map, or you can use it to change the hex effect underneath your units from contaminated to fire. The other side boss is Actus. The core mechanic around this fight is the Archaeotech crate. While these crates are on the battlefield, Actus takes less damage. However, he takes a big chunk of damage every time a crate is destroyed. The first few turns are a race against Actus, as he tries to collect the crates for himself. In doing so, this removes the opportunity for you to collect the crates for yourself and deal those big chunks of damage. Actus doesn't ever seem to try and heal himself in my testing, which is pretty nice. This fight also gives us a look at Psygex, confirmed to be the 5th AdMech character. I have a separate showcase on him that I will leave in the video description if you want to check that out. Killing the side bosses nets you the bonuses as shown here on screen. Feel free to pause or take notes. Okay, that's been quite a long video, but hopefully fairly thorough. I hope you enjoyed the showcase, and thank you as always to my Patreons. Bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!